What can you learn about publishing on vacation? Hi everybody, my name is Greg Crable. This is my daily podcast, Something I Learned Yesterday, in which I try to take one issue from the world of publishing and explain it in about 3 or 4 minutes. Today's is closer to 5. I recently had the great good fortune to visit my darling daughter in Hawaii, who's a captain with the Air Force. You're welcome. And while I was in Hawaii, I had the opportunity to think about a lot of things that are different out there. And one of the things really grabbed my attention was how far Hawaii is from any place else. It's really remarkable. It's way out in the middle of the ocean, which raises the question, how did the Polynesians find the place? And it's not just Hawaii, Easter Island, or any number of the other islands that are just way out there in the middle of nowhere that somehow or other the Polynesians found. So I was reading a little bit about that. I got this interesting book called The Sea Peoples that talks about some possibilities, what people thought when they first ran into the Polynesians and some of the stupid ideas they had. But there really isn't a good answer right now for how the Polynesians found these places. There are some ideas. It's possible, for example, that they were following migratory birds, or that there were a lot more sea turtles and they could follow them. I don't know. But it's very interesting to think about the clash of cultures between the Westerners and the Polynesians. The Westerners tended to think in terms of maps and in terms of fixed coordinates, longitude, latitude, all that kind of thing, where the Polynesians may have had a different way of thinking about directions. They may have thought, with the wind, or away from the mountain, or something, okay? But when the Captain Cook was speaking with this one particular Polynesian who was a very, very smart fellow and knew all kinds of stuff about the islands, and they tried to get him to draw a map, it was very different than what a Westerner would expect a map to be. Now, what does this have to do with publishing? This podcast is about publishing. Here is what it has to do with publishing. You need to learn to think about data in different ways. The problem of the communication between Captain Cook and the Polynesians was they thought about the whole question from completely different points of view. Now, you need to think about different ways to conceptualize and view and organize information. It's good for you. It's also good for your customers. It might give a competitive advantage to come up with a new way to think about data. Now, another lesson I got from the same question about the Polynesians and how they settled their islands was people still don't really understand how they did this. The Europeans came up with a lot of very strange explanations. Maybe God just created them right there in Hawaii, or maybe there's this sunken continent out there that people walked out there and then the land sunk. That's not true. Although there is this new continent they're finding out by New Zealand, by the way. But the point here is that just because you can't conceptualize something given your frame of reference, given what you know, doesn't mean that's always the way it's been. I mentioned before, perhaps things were different in the past in terms of the ability to follow turtles or birds or whales or who knows what. So there's the tyranny of the present, where you think everything has to be understood in light of the way we think about things now. And that's not so great. I mean, my kids, for example, can't conceive that when I was a kid and we didn't have cell phones, that we were able to go to movies and visit friends and, get our parents to pick us up after the movie and other kinds of things. You have to have a cell phone for that, right? Well, no, of course you don't. So it's important not only to try to conceptualize data from different points of view, it's also important to get your brain out of the tyranny of the present and try to think about the way things used to be and the way things might be in the future. So anyway, those are 2 thoughts from my most recent Crable letter, which just came out today. You can get it on my website. I'll also provide a link below. There's a bunch more stories, which maybe I'll address in a subsequent episode of this podcast. But I hope you enjoy it. This was a fun one to write. It was about lessons that I learned in Hawaii from various different things. Some about the Polynesians, some about bars, some other kinds of things. So check out the letter. Hope you enjoy it, and please leave me a comment. Thanks so much.